It was exactly 7 a.m., and the snow hadn't stopped falling. The kind of snow that clings to your coat and vanishes into a cold kiss the second it touches your skin. As I pulled into the school parking lot in Milwaukee, everything was quiet, muted beneath a blanket of white. I teach fifth grade and usually get to school early. A warm coffee in one hand, a bag full of papers slung over my shoulder, and my thoughts still stretching themselves awake from sleep. But that morning, that particular morning, something made me stop in my tracks. Right across the street, near the school bus stop, a small shape stood out against the snow-covered curb. A puppy, just sitting there, still and silent, like he was exactly where he was supposed to be, as if waiting for someone. A German Shepherd pup, no more than 3 or 4 months old, with ears far too big for his small, trembling head. His fur was soaked through, matted from the snow and wrapped around his neck, like a flare in the wintry grayness, was a bright red child scarf. I don't remember deciding to cross the street, only the sound of snow crunching beneath my shoes as I moved toward him. He didn't flinch, didn't bark. He simply watched me with eyes so dark and deep, they seemed to carry the weight of something too big for such a young creature. I lowered myself slowly, crouching so I wouldn't scare him. "Hey there, buddy," I murmured gently, my breath rising like smoke in the frozen air. "Where's your person?" And that's when I noticed it. Tucked under the scarf, clipped carefully to his collar with a small piece of plastic, was a note. My hands trembled as I pulled it free. The paper was damp at the edges, but still readable. The handwriting was large and blocky, written slowly with care. "Her name is Lily. She's gentle. Please take care of her." No name, no phone number, no explanation. Just that. My throat tightened. Something lodged itself in my chest. The puppy, Lily, stepped closer and leaned into my hand. Her fur was cold and wet, but she didn't seem scared. She gave the smallest wag of her tail, tentative and hopeful, as if she was trying to be brave. I glanced down the street searching, but there was no one. Just the heavy silence of morning snow, the stillness of a city that hadn't yet fully awakened, and the kind of quiet sadness you can't quite explain. I lifted her gently into my arms. She was far lighter than she should have been. I could feel her ribs through her fur. She let out the tiniest sigh and tucked her face into my coat as if she had finally reached some kind of shelter. I don't know why, but I whispered, "You're safe now." At the time, I didn't realize Lily was about to change everything, that she wasn't just a puppy waiting at a bus stop. She was the beginning of something I never saw coming. I carried her into my classroom, wrapped in an old fleece blanket I kept in my trunk for emergencies. She didn't make a single sound during the walk, just stayed curled against me, quiet and still, as though she was afraid I might disappear if she blinked. Inside, I sat down at my desk and turned the small space heater toward us. I held her close as the room slowly warmed. Her little body shivered less with each passing minute. Her breathing evened out. But every few moments, she'd glance toward the door, like she was still waiting. I couldn't shake the image of the person who had left her there. Likely a child. That red scarf was too full of innocence. And the handwriting had that determined neatness kids use when they want adults to take them seriously. The thought of that child, standing there, watching Lily go and then walking away, hit me like a punch to the chest. I picked up my phone and called the front office, told them I'd be late starting class. I didn't offer a reason, just said I needed some time. Then I called animal control to see if anyone had reported a missing dog. Nothing. I scoured online postings. Not a single mention of her. Lily stayed curled under my desk, front paws tucked beneath her, eyes never leaving me. Anytime I moved, she lifted her head. When I spoke, she let out soft sighs like my voice anchored her. She didn't whimper, didn't bark, just stayed close, as if she'd chosen me. I texted my neighbor to ask if they could bring over some dog food in a bowl. Within 20 minutes, Lily was eating in quiet, controlled bites, like she hadn't eaten in days but didn't want to appear greedy. That afternoon, I stayed late after the last bell rang. The thought of dropping her off at a shelter made my stomach twist. I'd fostered animals before, mostly cats, but this felt different. Lily didn't just need a home. She needed someone. When we arrived at my house, she hesitated at the doorway. Her paws stopped just before the threshold, unsure. I knelt down, reached out my hand, and whispered, "It's okay." She stepped forward slowly, tail low but wagging, her ears slightly pinned back in cautious hope. That night, she didn't cry or pace. She simply lay down on the floor beside my bed, her head resting against my hand. She didn't move once. It was like she needed to be sure I was real. And if I'm honest, maybe I needed the same from her. The next morning, I woke to find Lily still there, curled up beside me, her breathing steady and calm. I didn't want to move. I just watched her. Watched the soft rise and fall of her chest, the tiny twitch in her paw like she was dreaming of running through fields she'd never seen. I hadn't slept that well in years. Something about her being there, so silent and trusting, filled a quiet that had lived in my house for too long. At school, the moment Lily poked her head out from behind my office door, my students gasped in wonder. "Mr. D. Harris, is that your dog?" they asked, their eyes wide and excited. I paused. "Her name's Lily," I said gently. "She's staying with me for now." That was all I could say. By lunchtime, Lily had become the heart of the school. Everyone wanted to pet her, sit beside her, feed her snacks from their lunch boxes. The school counselor, Mrs. Dwight, stopped by my classroom and knelt beside her. Lily leaned into her like they were old friends. "She's got something special," Mrs. Dwight whispered. "Not just sweet, she sees people." That made me stop, because I had felt it too. Lily didn't just observe, she understood. During recess, one of my quietest students, Jamie, who rarely said a word to anyone, sat beside her in the corner of the playground. Lily placed her head gently on his lap. He didn't move for 10 minutes. Then so softly, he began to talk. Not to Lily, but to me. About the book he was reading. It was the most he had spoken in weeks. That night I found myself deep in research about therapy dogs, training, certifications, how it all worked. I had no idea if Lily would qualify, but something deep in my gut told me she was already doing the work. At home, she never left my side. She followed me from room to room, always a few steps behind. When I cooked, she sat quietly in the corner. When I read, she rested her head on my foot. I started talking to her about my students, about the days when teaching felt too heavy, about my late wife, about how empty the house had felt since she passed. Lily never judged, never interrupted. She just listened, steady, soft, and patient, just there. And somehow in that stillness, she started to stitch something back together in me that I didn't even know had torn apart. That night, as I turned out the lights, Lily quietly jumped onto the bed. No sound, no hesitation. I didn't stop her. We both knew, somehow, that she belonged there. She curled up beside me like she had always been part of my life, like the space beside me had always been waiting for her. By the end of the week, it felt like Lily had been with me forever. She moved through the school halls as if she had always known the way, greeting teachers with soft eyes, comforting children without a sound, never disrupting, only healing. It was as though her presence wove itself into the fabric of the building, gentle and sure, one invisible thread at a time. Mr. Lopez, the janitor, began slipping her treats from the vending machine with a wink and a pat on the head. The librarian set out a pillow in the reading corner during free period, and Lily would curl up there peacefully while students read aloud. It wasn't just that she was well behaved. It was something more, like she understood this place, like she belonged to everyone and no one at the same time. But the more she settled in, the more I kept thinking about the note, the red scarf, and the small, quiet act of love it must have taken to leave her there. I couldn't stop picturing tiny hands tying that scarf around her neck, placing her at the bus stop, whispering goodbye, and walking away into the falling snow. So I started asking around, quietly, cautiously. I spoke with the bus drivers, hoping someone had seen something. Cheryl, one of the older drivers, paused when I described Lily. Her eyes welled. She was there every morning last week, she said softly. Same time, same place. Just sitting, waiting. We all assumed she belonged to someone nearby. That image, that faithful little figure in the snow, would not leave me. I checked with the school counselor, asked if any students had moved recently or seemed off. She gave me a few names, none of which felt right, until Friday afternoon when I spotted a boy standing alone near the playground. His name was Eli. I recognized him, not from my class, but from the hallways. Quiet, respectful, always alone. As I approached, I noticed something sticking out of his coat pocket, the corner of a red scarf. My heart kicked against my ribs. Hey, Eli, I said gently. That's a nice scarf. He looked down, startled, then softly said, Thanks. It was hers. I didn't rush him. I waited. She used to walk with me to the bus every day, he said, his voice cracking. But we had to move. Our new place doesn't allow dogs. His eyes glistened. My mom said we had to give her up, but I couldn't take her to a shelter. I just wanted someone kind to find her. I knelt beside him, heart in my throat. Eli, what you did, it was brave. So brave. Tears spilled over his cheeks. Is she okay? I smiled. She's more than okay, Eli. She's changing lives, including mine. He wiped his face with his sleeve. Can I see her? I nodded, voice thick. Yeah, buddy. I think she'd really like that. That weekend, I took Lily to the park near Eli's new apartment. I wasn't sure what would happen, if she'd remember, if too much time had passed. But the moment she spotted him, standing in a puffy coat near a bench, her body lit up like someone had flipped a switch inside her. Her tail wagged so fast it was a blur. She let out a high-pitched whine, took a few tentative steps, then broke into a full sprint. Lily! Eli cried, falling to his knees. She launched into him, tail thudding against his sides, her whole being vibrating with joy. He wrapped his arms around her neck, burying his face in her fur, laughing and crying all at once. I looked away for a second, blinking hard, but the lump in my throat wouldn't go away. They stayed like that for a long time, the boy and the puppy, wrapped in something no words could reach. It wasn't just a reunion. It was a return to safety, to love. Eventually, Eli looked up at me. Thank you for taking care of her. I swallowed. I should be thanking you. She's done more for me than I ever thought possible. I miss her, he said softly, but I'm glad she's okay. She always made me feel better when things were bad. She still does, I said. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a tiny, worn stuffed bear. She used to sleep with this, he whispered. Can you give it to her? Lily sniffed the bear, then gently took it in her mouth. She didn't chew it. Instead, she placed it carefully on my shoe, as if she understood its importance. I'll keep it with her, I promised. As we walked back to the car, Lily kept glancing over her shoulder, checking on him again and again until he was out of sight. Then she leaned against my leg and let out a long, soft sigh. A goodbye. Not a tragic one, but a peaceful one. It didn't feel like an ending. It felt like the beginning of something bigger. On Monday morning, Lily walked into school like she owned the place. Head held high, eyes bright, and tucked gently in her mouth. the little stuffed bear, carried like a treasure. She brought a toy, someone shouted, but Lily didn't let it go. She carried it with quiet pride, like a badge, a reminder. That day, something shifted. Jaime, the boy who rarely spoke, asked if Lily could sit beside his desk during reading time. I said yes. By the end of the hour, he had read aloud an entire chapter to her. No prompting, no pressure, just him, the book, and Lily's steady gaze. Later, a girl named Tara came in crying after recess. Before I could say a word, Lily got up and walked to her. She gently nudged Tara's hand, and the girl collapsed to the floor, arms around Lily's neck. She cried there, soft, shaking sobs, until she couldn't anymore. And when she stood, her eyes were clearer. She hugged me without a word before leaving. By Thursday, the principal called me into her office. My stomach knotted. I thought I was in trouble. But instead, she handed me a flyer. Therapy Dog Certification Program. I think you should apply, she said. She's already doing the job. I stared at the paper, then at Lily, who sat patiently beside me, head tilted just slightly, as if she understood every word. She's not even mine, I said, almost to myself. The principal smiled. She's someone's now. That night, I filled out the application. It asked about training, experience, temperament. I didn't have all the technical answers, but I knew the truth, that Lily had a gift, that she saw people, that she didn't flinch at pain, that she didn't need to be taught how to love. She just did. In the living room, Lily lay curled at my feet, the little bear tucked beside her. She looked up as I typed and wagged her tail. Once, slow, steady. I reached down and stroked her head. You're already everything they need, I whispered. And for the first time in a long while, I believed that maybe, just maybe, I was too. We're going to help a lot of people, you and me, I whispered to her that night, my voice full of certainty, my heart full of quiet promise. And I meant every word, every single one. The certification process took weeks. Weeks filled with evaluations, interviews, and exercises designed to test her patience, her gentleness, her soul. Loud noises, sudden movements, wheelchairs spinning unpredictably across the room, strangers approaching with guarded faces. None of it rattled her. Not once. I watched as trained evaluators tried everything to make her flinch, to unsettle her, to draw out some reaction that would suggest she wasn't ready. But Lily just waited, calm, still, present in a way that silenced even the most skeptical trainers. It was like she had seen every kind of chaos and pain and had chosen stillness as her answer. You sure she's a rescue? One evaluator asked, his tone half disbelief, half wonder. She's got the soul of an old dog. I looked down at her, those warm, patient eyes that had watched me every day, like she already knew what was coming. She's been through more than most, I said softly. When the final approval letter arrived, I held the envelope in my hands like it was made of glass. Inside was her official badge, Lily, Certified Therapy Dog. I knelt beside her on the floor, clipped the tag to her vest and whispered, "You did it, sweetheart." She wagged her tail once, calm, steady, like she'd been waiting for the world to catch up to what she already knew. We started small, visiting the school's counseling office, then the reading groups, then slowly expanding to the children's hospital downtown. I'll never forget our first day there. Lily walked into the pediatric ward like she belonged, her steps soft but certain, as if she'd done this her whole life. In one of the rooms, a little boy no older than 7 lay in bed, silent and withdrawn. The nurses whispered that he hadn't spoken in days, hadn't eaten, hadn't responded to anyone. His mother sat beside him, her face carved with worry and sleeplessness. She looked at us like we were just another failed attempt. But Lily didn't need directions. She padded over quietly and sat by the side of the bed. No performance, no tricks, just presence. At first, the boy didn't move, but then slowly his tiny hand crept out from under the blanket. He touched Lily's ear gently, and then, almost too softly to hear, he whispered, "Hi." His mother gasped. A nurse nearby froze, hands mid-task. And Lily, as if she'd been waiting for that very word, gently rested her head on his chest and closed her eyes. It was like watching a storm finally break and sunlight pour through the cracks. Every visit after that felt like a ripple from that one quiet miracle. Children who hadn't smiled in weeks began to laugh again. Others who couldn't sleep would doze off beside her, their small fingers wrapped around her fur. Parents would sit on the floor beside her, arms around her body, clutching her like a lifeline. And each night when we returned home, she would curl up next to me in that familiar spot, her breath slow and steady, the little stuffed bear always close by. She carried something from every place we visited, a grief, a fear, a memory, and somehow transformed it into peace. Lily wasn't just offering comfort, she was offering healing, and healing in its purest form, silent, unconditional, enduring. Word spread fast. A local news outlet picked up her story, the stray puppy who waited at a bus stop and found her calling. The headline read, "From Abandoned to Angel, Lily the Therapy Dog." I cried reading it. They even interviewed Eli, with his mother's permission, of course. He stood beside her, older now, holding that same red scarf she had worn when I first found her. He looked directly into the camera and said, "I didn't give her up. I gave her a chance." Those words stayed with me, etched in the quiet places of my mind. Soon after, invitations began pouring in, from community centers, schools, a youth shelter. Every place we visited, Lily made an impact. She didn't need to speak, didn't need to bark or perform. She just was, and somehow that was enough. One afternoon, we visited a group home for teenagers struggling with trauma. The staff warned me ahead of time. "Don't be surprised if no one interacts," they said gently. "They've been through a lot." But Lily had her own way. She walked straight past the open space and headed to the far corner where a boy sat alone, hoodie up, arms wrapped tightly around his knees. She didn't try to touch him. She didn't even look directly at him. She just laid down quietly at his feet, curled up into a soft ball, and closed her eyes. Minutes passed. 5, then 10. Then his hand moved, barely, just enough to rest on her back. His fingers trembled as they made contact. I didn't say a word. None of us did. But I saw it. The softening in his shoulders, the tiny crack in the wall he had built around himself. Moments like that became routine. They happened over and over. Kids, teens, even adults. One day after a long visit, we stopped at a park to rest. An elderly man sat on a bench, tears in his eyes, holding a small photograph in trembling hands. Lily walked over, sat beside him. He glanced at her, then at me, voice a broken whisper. "She looks just like my Daisy. Lost her 2 months ago. I didn't think I'd ever feel this again." He reached down. Lily leaned into his hand. And in that moment, I finally understood. Lily wasn't just offering comfort. She was giving people something they thought they lost forever. Hope. That winter, a storm blanketed Milwaukee in thick, heavy snow. Schools closed. Roads shut down. Power flickered and failed across neighborhoods. Everything felt hushed, like the world had inhaled and didn't know how to exhale. But Lily didn't mind the cold. She bounded through the snow in the backyard, wild with joy, her paws stamping little perfect prints behind her. Each time she turned to look at me, her eyes were alight with something that made me feel 10 years younger, like she was asking me to follow, to believe and wonder again. And I did. One night just after midnight, the power went out completely. The house was dark and cold, the silence deeper than usual. I lit a few candles, wrapped myself in a blanket, and sat on the floor. Lily settled beside me, close, watching the flame flicker, that little stuffed bear still tucked beside her bed. I looked at her, the dog who had once waited at a snowy bus stop, alone, with nothing but a scarf and the hope that someone kind would find her, and felt a deep ache of gratitude swell in my chest. I didn't say much, just reached over and placed my hand on her paw. And she, without hesitation, placed her other paw on top of mine. That was the night I realized something had shifted. I used to come home to silence, to emptiness, to the echo of what used to be. But now, I came home to Lily, and somehow the house didn't feel empty anymore. The next morning, the sky hung heavy with clouds, and the streets still shimmered with ice. But we bundled up, determined, and made our careful way to the hospital. The pediatric wing had stayed open, even through the storm, and Lily had little hearts waiting for her, children who didn't understand power outages or road closures. All they knew was that Lily always came, and that morning she did not disappoint. One of the nurses gently pulled me aside near the nurse's station, her voice soft but eyes full of emotion. "She's more than a therapy dog," she said. "She's an anchor for us. For the kids, yes, but also for the staff. For all of us." I nodded, tears prickling the edges of my eyes. "For me too," I whispered. That evening, as we walked back through the snow-laced streets, the world seemed quieter, more peaceful. Lily stayed close to my side, her paws crunching rhythmically against the packed snow, tail swaying in an easy, confident rhythm. For the first time in years, winter didn't feel like something I had to survive. It felt like something I was living through, with her. And somehow, with Lily beside me, even the cold felt warm. Spring arrived slowly, like a soft exhale after a long-held breath. The snow retreated in scattered patches, revealing damp soil and the hesitant green of new beginnings. Trees began to bud again. Laughter returned to the parks. Children ran with muddy shoes and flushed cheeks. And Lily bloomed with the season. Her coat shimmered in the sunlight. Her step was light and buoyant. People stopped us on the street to call her name. She wasn't just a visitor anymore. She was family, part of the neighborhood's heartbeat. But even as light returned to the world, something new took root at the hospital. Her name was Amamira, 9 years old, fragile, bald from treatment, her frame so thin she seemed almost translucent. She didn't speak for the first week, refused visitors, turned away from her food, kept her face to the wall. The nurses tried, volunteers tried, nothing broke through until Lily. We stepped quietly into the room, sunlight stretching across the tiles. Amamira didn't turn, didn't blink. Lily sat just inside the door, not close, not pressing, simply present. Her stillness was its own language. We returned the next day. Again, Lily chose the same spot, quiet, patient. On the third day, a whisper drifted across the room like a fragile thread. "Is she real?" I nodded slowly, trying to hold my breath in case the moment slipped away. "She is. She looks like the dog from my dreams," Amamira said softly. Lily inched forward, slow and careful, until her chin rested on the edge of the bed. And Amamira smiled. From that day on, Lily became her shadow. She curled up beside her during long treatments, rested her head on Amamira's frail legs when the waves of nausea hit, and sometimes just sat there breathing. Deep, slow, steady, grounding her. One afternoon, as I checked Lily's vest, Amamira looked up at me with eyes wise beyond her years and said, "When I feel scared, I hold her ear. It's soft, makes the fear smaller." I had no words, just a quiet nod and the hard lump in my throat. Weeks passed, and Amamira grew stronger. Her laughter returned, Her color brightened. The day she was discharged, Lily walked beside her wheelchair, step by step, all the way to the front doors. At the threshold, Amamira leaned down and kissed Lily gently on the head. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling, "for being my brave." That evening we sat on the porch, the sky painted with streaks of orange and lavender. Lily rested her head on my foot, as she always did, and I exhaled. A deep, slow breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding for so long. The weight on my chest lifted, like clouds parting after a storm. She had carried so much, for so many, including me. Lily never asked for anything. No fanfare, no recognition, just presence, just love. And somehow in her quiet giving, she was mending things in people that medicine couldn't touch. Sometimes when I'm driving, I pass that old bus stop, the one where she sat shivering in the snow with that little red scarf and a note pinned to her collar. Every time I slow down, I glance at the bench, the stop sign, the patch of sidewalk that changed my life. And in my mind, I still see her sitting there, waiting, not with fear, but with a kind of sacred hope, as if she believed the world might still say yes. I think about Eli, too. I see him now and then. He's grown, taller, more confident, a smile that doesn't hide anymore. The last time we met, he brought Lily a new scarf. Green, spring green. She needed a new color, he said, something that shows how far she's come. She wore it like a crown. People often ask me, "Did you rescue Lily?" I always smile. The truth is, Lily rescued me. She took a life that had shrunk into quiet corners, a heart that had learned to live small, and gave it breath again. She replaced silence with connection, loneliness with purpose. And every day she reminds me that healing doesn't always roar into your life with answers. Sometimes it pads in quietly on four soft feet, curls up beside you, and stays. I didn't know I needed her. I didn't know a single puppy could reroute the course of my life. But now every time Lily walks into a hospital room, every time a child's hand reaches out for her, finding something solid in her fur, I remember the bus stop, the scarf, the note, the moment someone chose hope over surrender. And I want to live a life that's worthy of that choice, so we keep showing up, me and Lily, with her gentle eyes and that soul too big for her body. Because out there somewhere, another child is saying goodbye to something they love, hoping it finds safety, hoping it finds kindness. And we're here to prove that it can. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and share. Your support helps us rescue more dogs like Lily and bring comfort where it's needed most. Join the Brave Paws family, because love like this deserves to be shared.